What if the very shots you thought were just for shingles or respiratory syncytial virus hold a hidden key to safeguarding our aging brains? Those startling words echoed through a crowded conference hall recently, leaving experts and onlookers alike whispering in awe and disbelief. Yes, you heard that correctly. A new wave of scientific exploration is shining light on an unexpected defender against one of humanity's most daunting fears, dementia. Why should you, right now, lean in and soak up every detail of this story? Because it touches on an issue that looms over nearly every family at some point. A subtle yet haunting question. Will I, too, face the slow loss of cognitive ability? Today we embark on a deep dive into these groundbreaking findings, pulling apart every crumb of evidence to find out if these so-called ordinary vaccines might be quietly rewiring how the immune system defends the mind from age-related decline. In this episode, we will explore the jaw-dropping discovery that the vaccines commonly known for tackling shingles and respiratory syncytial virus could be doing far more than protecting you from rashes or coughing fits. We will examine how these shots, finished with an additional immune-boosting element called the AS01 adjuvant, may help tame the onset of dementia. Along the way, we will unearth the heart-stopping moment researchers realized something extraordinary was happening, dissect the labyrinth of potential mechanisms operating beneath the surface, and question whether the entire medical community might be on the cusp of an evolution in how we think about preventive care for the mind. Picture this: decades of searching, countless studies, and no definitive cure for the cluster of cognitive conditions that slip under the umbrella term dementia. Tragically, this condition afflicts tens of millions of people worldwide, numbers spelled out by grim forecasts that anticipate the figures will keep increasing in the coming years. For all our scientific achievements, dementia has remained stubborn, weaving its curse into the lives of individuals and families everywhere. The staggering part is just how quietly it can creep in, starting with subtle lapses in memory or moments of confusion that go unnoticed, only to expand until the identity and independence of the person are tragically pulled apart. But brace yourself. Not long ago, a swirl of data about vaccine uptake caught the attention of a handful of medical researchers. They noticed a hint that something unusual might be unfolding among a contingent of older adults who had been vaccinated for shingles. Traditional logic might suggest that limiting shingles infections in the elderly would eventually serve to reduce extra health complications, but the suspicion here was far more peculiar. Could it be that some special vaccine ingredient, like an immune-activating booster, was playing a more direct role in warding off cognitive decline? That notion captured the collective curiosity of scientists. Eager to see if it was merely a fluke or if there was a genuine correlation, research groups pored over electronic health record data of hundreds of thousands of older adults. They noticed that the vaccination status, particularly for those who received Shingrix or Arexvy, which are both formulated with the AS01 adjuvant, appeared correlated with a notably diminished risk of developing dementia over the span of 18 months following vaccination. Instantly, the question raged: is this real, or could the data be hiding a confounding factor? To untangle this puzzle, experts set up robust observational protocols, matching patients who had taken an AS01 adjuvanted vaccine with those who had received a more standard flu injection devoid of the same adjuvant. Their goal was to rule out the possibility that some general factor, say, better overall health habits or a healthier baseline, was skewing the results. It was not enough just to look at age or existing medical conditions. So, in a meticulous process involving 60 different variables, they matched sets of participants for traits like demographics, medical history, and more until they had two well-balanced groups. Then began the slow, detailed watch for one crucial outcome. Were new dementia diagnoses cropping up, and in which group did they rise the fastest? The results that emerged riveted the research community. People who had received Shingrix or Arexvy appeared to have an appreciably lower likelihood of being diagnosed with dementia in the year and a half following vaccination than those who had gotten a typical flu shot. Even more teasing was the realization that it did not seem to matter whether the adjuvanted vaccination was for shingles or respiratory syncytial virus, or whether the individual was a man or a woman. The common thread seemed to be the presence of the AS01 adjuvant. Longtime epidemiologists and neurologists furrowed their brows, fascinated by what these findings might signify. For years, scientists have considered whether severe infections could contribute to or worsen neurodegenerative processes, or whether certain viral threats have deleterious long-term effects on brain health. Varicella-zoster virus, for instance, and is well known for causing shingles and lying dormant in nerve cells. Could controlling that virus be delaying some neurological complications? Or, on the other hand, might it be that the body's immune cells get trained in an unexpected way by the adjuvant, stepping up to police broader inflammatory processes in the brain? The real question, it turns out, might be bigger. Is the link more about shutting down harmful pathogens, or more about adjusting the immune system itself? Imagine that an older adult's brain is like an intricate library. Over time, inflammatory clutter builds up, scattering piles of misfolded proteins and interfering with the order of those mental archives. A specialized group of brain immune cells, known as microglia, are the library's cleanup crew, but they can grow sluggish or unresponsive in aging or diseased brains. In the near future, we could learn that the AS01 adjuvant re-energizes these microglia, effectively giving them new stamina to sweep out harmful debris. If that is the case, then we might be gazing at a potential ally in defending the aging mind from the ravages of conditions like Alzheimer's disease. If you think that is as wild as it gets, just wait. Researchers point out that certain participants included in the Arexvy group could have inadvertently received a different respiratory syncytial virus shot, lacking AS01 in some hospital systems. That means the real protective effect of the adjuvanted vaccine might actually be greater than the data currently reveals. Now, does that mean you should rush out to ask for these shots merely for the sake of warding off memory loss? Not so fast. Scientists are quick to admit that these findings, while awe-inspiring, are still circumstantial in nature. There is a possibility that some confounding variable or lifestyle habit got missed in the matching process. However, the scientific investigators emphasize that it is the consistency of the data across multiple tests and sensitivity checks that nudges them toward believing something substantial is going on. They are not claiming we have found the fountain of youth. Rather, they are saying, look, this is a prominent enough pattern that we must give it the attention it deserves. And that is exactly what they are doing. Multiple teams have set their sights on new clinical trials, zeroing in on whether a booster shot with AS01 can actually reduce the incidence of dementia among high-risk populations. This is where the saga may get even more intense. If you are intrigued by this revelation, and if it struck you with the force of a lightning bolt, take a moment to tap that thumbs up. It might help this story reach someone else struggling to stay informed about the latest discoveries on dementia prevention. Because, let's be real, a single spark of insight can transform how we view our health's future. So, how did we even get to this point of believing that the humble booster in two seemingly unrelated vaccines might hold an essential key to preserving our faculties? To find the best possible answer, we must rewind to earlier studies that hinted certain viruses, such as herpes zoster, might pose a risk to the brain. After all, anything that triggers persistent inflammatory states can, in theory, pave the way for cognitive issues. Keep in mind how many medical conditions that do not seem immediately related end up having deeper systemic consequences. If a vaccine can curb recurring infections, it might indirectly spare the brain strain and lessen the damage from continuous inflammatory signals. Yet the puzzle is bigger than that, because the more scientists looked, the more it seemed that the direct antiviral effect might not tell the whole story. Where Shingrix outperformed other older shingles vaccines was precisely in its reliance on a potent adjuvant to bolster immune reactions. This advanced approach ensures that older adults, who often show weaker immune responses, still mount a rigorous defense. Throw in the revelations about Arexvy, the new shot battling respiratory syncytial virus, and it became clearer that the adjuvant itself was a common factor. Was it waking up the body's innate defenders in a thorough enough manner that it had an impact on the brain's internal cleanup processes? This possibility finds further support in the realm of laboratory science that has examined how microglia respond to well-crafted immunotherapies. Some researchers propose that if you can safely stimulate the body's first-line immune compartments, those that typically become sluggish with age, you might prevent harmful proteins like beta-amyloid from piling up. Of course, whether that is actually happening in real patient populations is the burning question, and the data swirling around Shingrix and Arexvy is raising eyebrows in the best way. The ramifications, should these findings be verified through more rigorous randomized trials, are staggeringly broad. First, it would transform the significance of adult vaccination, elevating it from a routine disease prevention strategy to a balcony seat in the fight against neurodegeneration. Second, it could open the door to future improvements in vaccine design, where we might see specialized boosters formulated specifically to tackle processes implicated in dementia. Third, and perhaps most tantalizing for everyday people, it provides a glimmer of hope that the mental decline we have come to accept may not be as inevitable as we once believed. But let us not declare victory yet. Even as we map out these thrilling new prospects, skepticism is healthy. Observational results can be highly suggestive but still incomplete. Scientists must weed out every alternative explanation, from the possibility that the individuals who chose these particular vaccines might already be more health conscious, to other less obvious aspects of their lifestyles. And the dissenting voices remind us that the time frame observed, 18 months, is comparatively brief in the story of dementia progression, which can stretch over many years. So, are we seeing an authentic delay of the disease, or merely a deferral of diagnosis? Tough questions remain. Nevertheless, these questions are precisely why the research scene is electrified right now. Having an 18-month window of lower risk is a huge deal when you consider the fear and costs surrounding dementia. Families and caregivers grapple with serious logistics, emotional burdens, and the heartbreak of watching loved ones lose pieces of themselves. Any real extension of those healthy years would represent more time for individuals to engage with loved ones, more opportunities to remain independent, and a softer landing through the later stages of life. Imagine the societal ripple effects if this connection is proven beyond doubt. Dementia's toll is not just personal, it is a tidal wave that affects public health systems, economies, and entire communities. If the consistent use of an AS01 boosted vaccine cuts down new cases or even merely postpones them, the relief on long-term care resources could be enormous. We are talking about potential billions of dollars saved in healthcare costs, a stronger and more optimistic workforce, and families able to remain stable far longer. This is why government agencies, philanthropic foundations, and vaccine manufacturers are plunging into further investigation. Up ahead, we may see brand new clinical trials with thousands of participants, carefully randomized to receive an AS01 adjuvanted booster or a control injection. Researchers will measure not just incidence of dementia in these participants over several years, but also biomarkers in the blood, or perhaps even imaging data that can reveal changes in the brain's inflammatory or protein-related processes. If the signals detected mirror what we are seeing in the observational studies, it will effectively open the door to a new era of immunological approaches to cognitive decline. When you boil it down, the core excitement flows from a single hypothesis: that by harnessing the body's own immune system in a targeted, safe, and thoroughly tested way, we can help preserve the essential stuff that makes us who we are: our memories, our reasoning abilities, and our sense of self. It is a shift from purely drug-based attempts at tackling dementia, an area that has seen many ups and downs, to tapping into the synergy between infection defense and neurological resilience. Before we sail further, let us place a spotlight on how the numbers themselves have been spelled out. We are talking about tens of thousands of older adults in each vaccine group, carefully matched for numerous factors. We are talking about research networks that track the health details of hundreds of thousands of individuals, well over 400,000 in total. Then, consider the broader scale. Around 57 million people worldwide live with dementia, and that figure could surge to 139 million by the time we reach 2050, if we follow certain predictions. Even a small percentage dip in that trajectory could yield a massive transformative effect on global well-being. That is why so many eyes are glued to the test results. Healthcare providers are grappling with the reality that we have few truly effective ways of preventing or delaying dementia. The handful of treatments that address Alzheimer's disease, for instance, can partially slow or manage symptoms, but they do not outright stop the underlying damage. If something as straightforward as a well-designed vaccine adjuvant can tilt the odds in our favor, then we might be witnessing the outlines of a landmark achievement. Speaking of discoveries, if this moment has stirred your passion for exploring fresh perspectives on health, consider clicking that subscribe button. It is a small gesture, But in a sea of constant information, it helps us build a community dedicated to sharing the kinds of insights that can truly spark a shift in how we live and age. Let us journey further into the labyrinth by siding with the naysayers for a moment. Could concentrating too much on the AS01 angle become a distraction from crucial lifestyle modifications that also reduce dementia risk? True enough, daily habits like exercise, a well-rounded diet, and mental stimulation remain pillars of cognitive health. We do not want the hype about an adjuvant overshadowing that fundamental wisdom. Still, the notion that we might add vaccinations to our arsenal of preventive measures is thrilling, especially if it is proven to be widely accessible, relatively low cost, and safe for seniors. And safety, of course, cannot be glossed over. Older adults can be vulnerable to side effects, and an intense immune reaction might be taxing for some. Shingrix, for example, is known to cause localized pain and sometimes systemic symptoms like fever or malaise. The real question is, do these side effects pale in comparison to the potential boon of preserving cognitive function? Many would argue that if the data supports it, the trade-off is probably well worth it. Regulatory bodies will be keen to see thorough safety tracking, ensuring that no hidden problem, particularly in older age groups, offset the possible gains. We should also acknowledge that not all forms of dementia share the same underlying pathologies. It is a wide landscape that includes Alzheimer's disease, vascular dementia, Lewy body dementia, and others. If a vaccine-based approach can reduce inflammation or stimulate cellular cleanup, it might be especially relevant to certain dementia types characterized by heavy immunological or toxic protein involvement. But we still need to learn more about how well these protective effects carry over to various dementia subtypes. This is where carefully curated datasets and larger future trials can better delineate which patients stand to benefit the most. One especially enticing element of all this is the question of synergy. Imagine combining mild lifestyle interventions, like better diet and exercise regimes, with a carefully timed dose of an AS01 inclusive vaccine. Could that stack the odds even more in favor of cognitive resilience? This synergy concept is something that a handful of labs are beginning to explore, convinced that multiple modest gains can add up to a significant barrier against this debilitating condition. At this point, supporters of the vaccine approach are distributing dense manuscripts filled with graphs, hazard ratios, and Kaplan-Meier curves to demonstrate the cost-effectiveness and quality of life improvements that might be realized. They highlight the potential for large-scale public health programs that integrate routine shingles and respiratory syncytial virus vaccination for older adults, with an added emphasis on brain health. On a policy level, it raises an intriguing question. Could governments or insurance providers begin promoting these vaccines more vigorously if subsequent research confirms their protective effects against dementia? Hypothetically, in the next few years, your physician might bring up the topic of an immune-based brain protection strategy during checkups. Far from science fiction, it is a direction some experts see as entirely plausible. The medical dialogue might evolve, normalizing the conversation about how an older adult's immunological tune-up is as fundamental as bone density maintenance or cardiovascular checkups. That synergy of preventive measures could tip the balance in favor of living not just longer, but with better quality of life. But remember, to keep the story balanced, we must remain vigilant about other lines of research. Already, there is momentum in the search for advanced Alzheimer's drugs that target amyloid plaques or tau proteins. The vaccine angle adds a new dimension to that quest, not necessarily replacing those other efforts, but reinforcing that the interplay between immune health and cognitive well-being is a potent frontier. Close your eyes and imagine a future where a routine injection every few years helps keep your mind sharp and your sense of self intact. The day could come when grandmothers and grandfathers line up not just for a flu shot, but for a special adjuvanted booster that offers a real, evidence-backed chance of fending off the shadow of dementia. It is a scenario that was once purely imaginary, but might, in the face of mounting data, be approaching reality. The best part? This new horizon might not be limited to shingles or respiratory syncytial virus alone. If the AS01 adjuvant stands as the real hero, scientists might incorporate it into other vaccine formulas, or even into novel prophylactic treatments specifically engineered against neurological decline. The domino effect of these breakthroughs could unlock doorways for tackling other conditions that involve immune dysfunction or inflammatory cycles. Indeed, the boundaries between different branches of medicine grow hazy as we realize how interwoven the immune system is with countless aspects of health. For every dreamer who sees the potential in this line of study, there is also a realist reminding us that medical science sometimes stumbles, that preliminary correlations do not always hold up under the strict lens of randomized, controlled trials. Nevertheless, the push to ascertain the truth is strong. Momentum is rising as more labs gather additional sets of data, refining our understanding of precisely which populations benefit the most and how to optimize dosage timing. If you have stayed with me to this point, you are likely as driven by curiosity as I am. So, let us pledge to keep an eye on new developments, to stay informed, and to share this knowledge with those who may need it the most. It is about amplifying a conversation that could transform how we perceive cognitive aging. What was once a silent resignation settles now into a stance of guarded optimism. In concluding this deep dive, do not forget that your own steps toward brain health still matter. These new insights about AS01 adjuvanted vaccines may be fiery and exhilarating, but they are not a substitute for a balanced lifestyle, consistent healthcare checkups, and mental challenges that keep our minds engaged. Think of it as one more arrow in the quiver, an extra line of defense that could shift the odds in favor of maintaining one's cherished memories longer. With so many unanswered yet hopeful questions swirling, it is an opportune moment to remain engaged in the conversation. Spread the word of this breakthrough to a friend or family member who might find hope in it. Reach out to your medical provider if you are curious about vaccination schedules. And if the idea of harnessing immunity to help shield the brain spurs a flicker of excitement within you, do not let that spark die out. Continue following the science, because each revelation day by day paints a richer picture of what might be just around the corner for the fight against dementia. Finally, let us elevate our collective sense of possibility. The real magic of the AS01 adjuvant story is that it opens our eyes to how dynamic and resourceful the human body can be. When expertly guided, even subtle immunological nudges could yield vital benefits that extend far beyond conventional expectations. If that does not awaken a sense of wonder in you, perhaps little else will. The march of progress may be slow at times, but each new step can be momentous, inspiring a renewed wave of passion to tackle some of the hardest challenges in healthcare. And that, in the end, might be the greatest revelation of all.